Hey, it's me, Julian Greystoke. I'm an indie author, and today we are here to talk about first lines and how important are they. First of all, start with a disclaimer. All of this is just my opinion and what I have experienced. You may disagree, and that's okay too. So first lines. Everybody seems obsessed with writing the perfect first line. They have to write something so meaningful, so memorable, that people will be quoting it forever. But how important are first lines really? Well, they are and they aren't. I'm going to use a couple of examples here to talk about how first lines nowadays seem to be striving more for sounding cool versus first lines that I prefer, which are putting in a lot of work. But first, why first lines? Why is everyone obsessed with crafting the perfect first line? Part of the problem is that publishing has kind of told us that we need one. Especially if you're planning on being traditionally published, I feel that the only person who's actually going to care all that much about your first line is going to be the agent you're trying to hook. Because the agent is often looking to have to read as little as possible of a story that they're not going to like, they might stop at your first line if it's not a grabber. But honestly, after that, I have never felt that first lines are important in the slightest. I don't know a single reader who would stop reading a book after the first line wasn't perfect or amazing or grabbing. Let's look at the first line in the book that I'm doing for a read-along, Light Lark. This is kind of the epitome of modern first lines. How they're trying to be grabby and catchy and like quotable, and it's not doing what the author could be doing with a truly amazing first line. Isla Crown often fell through puddles of stars into faraway places, always without permission and seemingly on the worst occasions. Okay, it's catchy, it's snappy, it sounds cool, right? But what is it actually telling us? Okay, what is this first line getting across? There's a character named Isla Crown, and she falls through puddles of stars. That means nothing to us. Now, perhaps it could entice us to keep reading because we want to know what that means. Always without permission, okay, that tells us that our main character is probably going to be sassy, somebody who doesn't need people's permission, and seemingly on the worst occasions. So perhaps she doesn't have any control over this weird situation. So the reader, looking at this first line, comes out of it mostly confused. And I feel that the author is looking for your confusion to keep you reading versus grounding you as a first line can. And the first line that I'm going to be reading is my example of a great first line can. Also, some of the things in this first line are lies. As you read further in the book, some of these things aren't true. For example, Isla never falls through puddles of stars to faraway places on the worst occasions. That was just put there to sound cool. Also, the puddles of stars, cool description. You're waiting for more as the book goes on. You don't get it. You don't get more than that. So while that opening is trying to sound catchy and confusing enough that you want to keep reading, let me read you a line that I feel is so well crafted and deceptively simple, not catchy, not gimmicky at all, but does so much with the first line. I'm going to be reading you the first line of the book Redwall by Brian Jacques. Matthias cut a comical little figure as he wobbled his way along the cloisters, with his large sandals flip-flopping and his tail peeping from beneath the baggy folds of his oversized novice's habit. That seems like a pretty simple first line, right? It's just the little character walking along a wall. First off, it names the character right away, something both of them do. He cuts a comical little figure, and later we're told that his clothing is too big. His sandals, his habit, all too big. So that grounds us in a character who is small, maybe smaller even than other characters of his same species. Also, if you want to talk about things connecting and not connecting, the smallness of Matthias leads into a theme that Brian Jacques uses in a lot of his works. Unlike the Light Lark reading, which barely even is true about the rest of the story, this first line leads you onto a theme that Brian Jacques loves to explore, and that is a very simple theme of the little guy, the small hero, the one that nobody thinks can win and become the hero of the day. He wrote that way because he knew it would appeal to children who often do feel very small and very powerless in their world. So he liked to write heroes who are very small and very powerless and who become the ones that save the day. So right away, we are starting with a theme that not only carries through this book, but pretty much every single book in the Red Ball series. It also hints that he's a non-human character with his tail. If we read the back, we know he's a mouse, also on the cover. But if you're going into this completely blind, it's telling you right away that you're dealing with a non-human character. Also, he's on the cloisters. That tells you that he's in an abbey along with him wearing a habit. He's a novice, so we know he's not very high up in the structure of this abbey. He's in motion. We're watching him walk. He's going somewhere. So that can get our interest to let us know, hey, keep reading, find out where he's going, without any obnoxious gimmicks about like confusing us and making us want to know more, because what does falling through puddles of stars mean? Everything in this deceptively simple first line is grounding us, is bringing us into the world immediately. Everything in the first line of Lightlark is trying to hook us. It's a desperate attempt to hook us. Here's interesting ideas. What, don't you want to find out what these things mean? And I would personally prefer a line that seems less cool, but immediately shows the skill of the author in grounding us with the character, with the world, with the situation, with the tone. This first line does so much grounding work just in one sentence. This one does not. Although if it was trying to indicate that this is a confusing, poorly written book, that is actually accurate. Big difference in skill levels here as well with this author versus this one. But for me, a good first line does what Red Ball's first line does, not what Lightlark's first line does. And I encourage all of you out there who are trying to craft these flawless, perfect, catchy first lines to not worry about it. Especially like a lot of times you might spend so much time crafting a perfect first line, and then the story continues and oops, you decide you want to start it somewhere else. Maybe that beginning wasn't what you wanted. Now what are you supposed to do with that amazing first line that you wrote? It doesn't work anymore. Be like Brian Jakes. Use the first line skillfully to ground us in your world. But that's just my opinion. While it's fun to go online and look at famous first lines and amazing sounding first lines, what really matters is what it's doing for the overall actual health and well-being of the story itself. Because you're here to write a whole book, not just a first line. But what do you think? Comment below and let me know whether you think that first lines are super important. Do you even notice first lines, or do you just keep reading? Do you think this trend nowadays of first lines having to be so carefully crafted and snappy and like enticing, do you think that that's a good trend, or do you think that it's a bad trend like I do? I would love to hear all of your thoughts. Comment below and let me know. I couldn't tell you what the first lines of any of my books are. I aspire to write first lines as good as Brian Jakes, but I don't know if I'm there yet. Thanks so much for watching. Don't forget you can purchase my books on Amazon right now, and you can support me on my Patreon, where you get access to extra content not seen here on the regular channel. Don't forget to wander around the channel to your heart's content, and you will find all the links to my social media in the doobly-doo for ease of your clicking. And I will see all of you again next time with whatever it is I happen to be doing next time. Bye!